So I'm going to do a spreadsheet here where we want to set something up to look at a lot of different possibilities for our trolley problem. And so let's start by setting up what we want to check. And so really in that trolley problem, near the end of the article, they mentioned running an experiment where they had some people answer on a survey what they would do as far as clicking a button for 5 mice versus 1 mouse, and then they actually had some other people in a group click a button instead of taking a survey, and so they really ended up with these two proportions, and so from the questionnaire, so we can put in here questionnaire. I'll make that just a little bit wider, and that had a portion of 2/3. So to make 2/3, I'm just going to say equals 2 divided by 3. And then the actual, so when they had actual mice, in that case they had the 5/6. So we put in equals 5/6, and so we have these two proportions, and the question is, well, could they have come from the same population? And so what we want to do is set up a chi-square to check that out. But one of the problems is we don't actually know how many people did each of these, at least from the article, and so I thought that would be a nice way to kind of examine this idea and what sample size can do, but not just sample size, sample proportions, as far as how big is one sample compared to another sample, that sort of thing. And so what we want to do is set up a 2x2 chi-square, and so as we set that up, you know, I can maybe come down here and I'll need just those two things. You know, up here this was 2/3. Well, 2/3 did what? 2/3 pushed the button, and so I'm going to say yes on the button. That was one possibility, and another possibility was no on the button. So we have that, and then here again, this was our questionnaire. Oh, that was nice, and our actual mice, and so we have that. Now here I need to fill in the actual numbers. Well, I don't know the actual numbers, and so that's where we're going to play around a little bit with this. Is there are two aspects of these actual numbers. So the article mentioned hundreds. Well, hundreds, that could be like 150, could actually be hundreds, because that's 1.5 hundreds. But you know, 100,000 could also be hundreds, and then the other part is, well, okay, hundreds, so maybe it was 300, but was that 50-50? Did 150 answer the questionnaire and 150 actually work with mice? We don't know. So we're going to set this up to be able to handle looking at those, and then we want to look at a graph as to sort of what happens. And so somewhere we need to put down a couple things: actual numbers and proportions. And so here the 0.66 and the 0.83 are the proportion who said yes on the button, and so possibly I need to insert a row above and say yes button. But again, these are just the proportions. We want to put actual numbers in here, and so there's yes on the button, and well, then no on the button, and no would just be 1 minus the yes, and so I can do that formula, just 1 minus b2, hit enter, and then actually just drag that formula down, and so there I have my proportions and of just people who hit or didn't hit the button, or said they would or said they wouldn't, and now somehow I need to turn that into actual numbers. Well, that's going to be based on how many were in the sample, and let's do it this way, is we're going to enter these 3 numbers and then build our table from that. And so we're going to start with our total. So I'm going to put out to the side here total number, I guess. So total number. And then here I'm going to label these as proportion. So I'll just say proportion questionnaire, and proportion from the actual mice. And I'm going to actually put those numbers in here. So my proportion of the questionnaire, well, you know, if I was going to do this, I'd probably start it out, I'd try to do 50-50, so 0.5. Now I'm not going to type 0.5 in there. I want something that I can update really easily, so I'm going to say 1 minus the 0.5 that's right there, but use a formula, and so that's also 0.5. And my total number here, I don't know, let's say it was 200 people. Okay, now I'm going to fill in my totals here, and so this is just equal to whatever that number is, and then this is just equal to whatever that number is times this number. Okay, and actually I want to put a $sign on that 8 so that when I copy it up it'll be fine. And so I'm going to copy this up here, and notice it's looking at the 0.5 up there and the 200 there. And now that I think about it, actually let's get rid of that, and oops, I can't, backspace. Okay, so let's put in a sum just to make sure that we did this right. So that better sum to our total of 200, and it does, so we can always check that. And those sums, I can copy that. Again, I can do it by grabbing that bottom right and dragging over like that. Of course, there's nothing up there, so it won't add anything. But I could also do things like copy and click on that and say paste. So lots of ways to fill things in, copy and paste. Now here, for my questionnaire, what I need to do is get this 2/3 of that 100, and so I'm going to take that number times that number, and then I'm going to want to do kind of the same thing here and there, but I need to allow, I don't want the D column to change, so I'm going to put a $sign on that D, but not the 6, because I want that to go down. When I copy down this way, I want it to go to row 7. Okay, so I hit enter, and I can copy that by pulling that over that way and pull that down that way, and we see that indeed we have 150 and 50, and that makes 200. Now here we don't have real live numbers. You know, we have the 66.66 and 33.33. We'll live with that, just for this case. So So we have our chi-square table here with our row sums and our column sums and our total and the numbers of people in each one for a total number of 200 and 50% in each row. Now it could be that, well, actually it was 75% in the first row. It was maybe a lot easier to have people take the survey than to actually work with the setup with the actual mice, and so, well, maybe they actually did this where they had 150 people do the questionnaire and 50 people do the actual mice. We don't know, and that's the whole point, is we want to be able to change this number, but for now I'm going to change it back to 0.5, and so we have that. So here I've set up how I can very quickly change for any choice of number here, total number. Again, if I switched it to 1,000, sure, why not 1,000? I do that, and you know, I get 500 of each because they were 50-50, and I have 750 here, 250 there in that column. Okay, so I can quickly change the total number, and I'll change it back to the 200, and I can quickly change the two proportions just by changing this top number. You know, maybe that was only 10% because we really wanted to, whoops, 0.1, because we really wanted to do the actual mice, and so there's 10 and 90%. So we can change those two numbers and change our data very quickly, and so that's what we want to do for this project, is be able to change our numbers very quickly so we can get lots of different possibilities for both our total number and these two proportions of how people were assigned to either questionnaires or actual mice. Okay, so that's that one, and we'll have another video on adding our chi-square to it.